A young maid gasps for air, her eyes welling with tears as she pleads for mercy from the one she calls Master Alphonse. Suddenly, a pair of eyes snap wide open, filled with a sudden, jarring clarity. He finds himself looming over her, his hands locked around her throat in a terrifying display of violence that he doesn't remember initiating. Horrified by his own actions, he stares down at the beautiful girl he is assaulting, his mind racing to understand how he ended up in such a monstrous position. The boy recoils instantly, releasing his grip as the maid collapses, coughing and gasping for breath while he frantically apologizes for the inexplicable attack. As the shock subsides, a chilling realization dawns on him. He has been reincarnated into the world of Dominant Tactics, an adult game he once played, and he has taken the role of Alphonse, the story's most loathsome minor villain. This world is the kingdom of Altria, a land defined by a rigid caste system, where commoners are bound to the absolute will of the nobility, and magical power is a privilege reserved solely for those of highborn blood. In this harsh reality, the true hero is Siegmund, a rare commoner gifted with magic who is destined to rise through the ranks of the academy, save the world, and win the hearts of the realm's most beautiful women. He was the hero of the story, but the boy now inhabiting this body was anything but. Alphonse von Very was a name synonymous with cruelty, a minor noble who took pleasure in tormenting those beneath him, especially his personal maid, Rico. In the original game, his path led only to ruin and exile. Determined to change that dark future, the young noble bowed his head low in a gesture of genuine contrition. He apologized to the stunned maid for everything he had done, swearing that such behavior would never be repeated. She could hardly believe her ears, her wide eyes reflecting her utter confusion at this sudden change of heart. When he gently dismissed her, she could only stammer a quiet response before making her exit. Once the door clicked shut and he was finally alone, the weight of his situation came crashing down. He slumped to the floor, the facade of noble composure vanishing instantly. Tears began to flow freely as he sobbed, questioning the cruel irony of his fate. Why, of all the characters he could have become, was he trapped in the skin of this pathetic, loathed villain instead of the glorious protagonist? Eventually, the boy wiped his eyes and sat up, forcing himself to face the reality of his new life. He estimated his current age to be around 10, realizing that wallowing in despair would solve nothing. His mind raced ahead to the events he knew were coming. In 5 years, he would enter the Septrion Magic Academy and cross paths with the true hero. If he continued down the path of a villain, he would surely be crushed, so he resolved to find a way to avoid that inevitable confrontation. He made a solemn vow to never commit the atrocities his game counterpart was known for. As long as he kept his distance from the main characters and lived a quiet life, he hoped he could escape the tragic end that had been written for him. He envisions a future where he must fend for himself, imagining a version of himself clad in adventurer's gear, torch in hand, facing off against subterranean creatures. To survive the exile he foresees, he realizes he must acquire the strength to endure, perhaps even by honing his skills in dangerous dungeons. Looking out at the moonlit estate, he solidifies his resolve, concluding that his path is set. The first step toward this new life of self-reliance will begin tomorrow with a focus on building his physical endurance. As dawn breaks, Rico makes her way through the quiet corridors of the mansion, bracing herself for another day of the young master's usual temperament. She recalls his odd behavior from the previous day, hoping he might have returned to his normal self as she opens the door to greet him. The sight that greets her is entirely unexpected, leaving her frozen in the doorway. Instead of a demanding child in bed, she finds him collapsed on the floor, drenched in sweat and gasping for air after an early morning workout. After she rushes to provide him with water, he offers a weary but genuine smile of gratitude. He admits that the training regimen he set for himself was far more taxing than he had anticipated, leaving Rico flustered by this unprecedented display of kindness. She remains in a state of disbelief, her mind racing as she processes the fact that the young master not only thanked her, but is actively pursuing self-improvement. When she presents his breakfast, his eyes light up with genuine appreciation for the meal, a stark departure from his usual attitude. This new, humble demeanor stands in sharp contrast to the boy he used to be. In the past, he would have sneered at his meals, calling them disgusting and arrogantly demanding to be hand-fed while berating those around him. Now, he sits at the table and eats with gusto, handling his own utensils without a single complaint. Rico watches from the side, her heart lightened by the sight of him enjoying his food independently, a small but significant sign of the change taking root within him. He had left the dining room in a state of quiet disbelief, leaving Rico to marvel at the empty plates. The maid couldn't help but feel as though the boy had been replaced by someone else entirely, his newfound manners as startling as his appetite. Meanwhile, the young master's mind was already racing toward his next encounter, recalling another individual who had suffered under his previous cruelty. He was soon interrupted by Rico, who arrived to announce that his magic lesson was about to begin. She informed him that Lady Rosalia was already waiting in the courtyard. With a polite word of thanks that left the maid stunned once more, he set off to face his teacher. Waiting in the garden was Rosalia von Einborn, a woman whose fate in the original history he remembered was tragic, driven to despair by the young master's relentless harassment. Within his mind, the memories of the future weighed heavily. He knew that to change his destiny, he had to master magic properly and make amends for the suffering he had caused. As he approached, the teacher visibly recoiled, her eyes wide with a fear born of past encounters. Before she could utter a word of protest, the boy dropped into a deep, formal bow, his voice steady as he offered a sincere apology for his past transgressions. She stood frozen, her mind struggling to process the sight of the arrogant young noble humbling himself before her. When he requested to begin his studies again from the very basics, her confusion only deepened, though she eventually managed a hesitant nod to begin the lesson. The hours that followed were grueling, pushing his young body and mind to their absolute limits. By the time the sun began to dip, he lay sprawled on the grass, gasping for air as his teacher called an end to the day's rigorous training. He felt the weight of exhaustion in every fiber of his being, sweat matting his hair to his forehead. The realization hit him that mental focus was just as taxing as physical labor, and he would need far more stamina if he hoped to keep up this pace. Despite his fatigue, he called out to the departing teacher, causing her to flinch instinctively once more. His request for a recommendation on magic books for self-study left her speechless, her shock at his sudden dedication to learning mirroring the transformation taking place within the manor. He carries the heavy stack of books through the manor's grand hallway, accompanied by his teacher. As they pass a stern, dignified man in formal attire, the boy offers a polite greeting to his father, the Marquis Mark von Very. The Marquis stops them, his gaze narrowing with suspicion as he questions what his son intends to do with such a collection. He openly wonders if the boy simply plans to sell the valuable volumes for quick coin, unable to believe a genuine interest in study. His eyes widen in utter disbelief when he hears the words self-study. Rosalia quickly interjects, informing the Marquis that the young master has been pushing himself to his absolute physical and mental limits in his training. Despite her testimony, the father remains wary, advising the teacher not to let her guard down, reminding her of the boy's troublesome nature. Listening to this, the child realizes just how deep his reputation as a villainous character goes, even within his own family. He begins a grueling new routine the very next morning, focused on building the physical stamina he so desperately lacks. His small form can be seen running laps around the manor grounds, sweat beading on his brow as he pushes through the exhaustion. By the afternoon, his focus shifts to the arcane, practicing mana manipulation under the watchful eye of his teacher. Though his hands tremble from the effort and his breath comes in ragged gasps, he refuses to stop his magical exercises. When night falls, he does not rest, instead burying himself in the magic tomes he requested. Surrounded by the quiet of his room, he spends hours absorbing the complex theories and history of the magical arts. A full month of this relentless dedication passes, leading him to a pivotal moment of testing. With a look of intense concentration, he attempts a specialized water spell unique to his bloodline, successfully manifesting a shimmering slime between his palms. He focuses intently, deciding to add a personal touch to the slime generation spell. The magic reacts violently, bubbling and surging with unexpected energy until a sudden burst of light fills the room. A soft, wet sound echoes in the silence that follows the magical discharge. The young boy cheers in triumph as a small, gelatinous creature sits before him, letting out a soft squeak. Overjoyed by his success, he decides to name his new companion Puggy, finding the simple name fitting for the round, bouncy entity. He cradles the creature in his hands, watching it bounce playfully on his desk. A bittersweet realization strikes him. This small slime is the very first creature in this new life to show him any form of genuine, unprompted affection. Tears well up in his eyes as the slime nuzzles against his cheek in a gesture of comfort. He reflects on his isolation, knowing that despite a month of diligent effort, the deep-seated resentment his family and the servants feel toward him, remnants of his past self's reputation, will not vanish easily. He whispers a soft thank you to the creature for being there when no one else is. Later that night, he stands by the window of the grand estate, the moon hanging high in the sky. With Puggy resting atop his head, he reaffirms his resolve to grow stronger in both body and magic, knowing that his survival in this world depends entirely on his own perseverance. Meanwhile, in a humble home within the commoner district, another story begins to unfold. A young boy with dark hair sits at a simple wooden desk, his expression one of sudden, jarring realization as he looks at his surroundings. The boy scans the room with wide, disbelieving eyes, a sense of profound familiarity washing over him. He recognizes every detail of the modest space, It is the childhood bedroom of the game's original protagonist, and the truth hits him with staggering force. He has been reborn into this world. He stares into the mirror, his eyes widening as he recognizes the reflection. It is a face he knows well from the game's event items. The face of the protagonist, Siegmind. The realization hits him like a physical blow as he sees his own name written out, confirming his new identity. Overwhelmed with joy, he can hardly contain his excitement at the discovery. He has been reborn as the lead of his favorite adult strategy game, a world he has conquered countless times. This is the legendary Isekai reincarnation he had only dreamed of, and he is the star of the show. His mind immediately races to the future, envisioning the beautiful heroines who will soon surround him. He imagines them vying for his attention, their voices filled with affection as they call out his name. A life of romance and luxury, just like in the game, seems to be within his grasp. The fantasy deepens as he considers the possibilities of a harem route, convinced that a true hero should embrace such pleasures. He pictures himself at the center of their adoration, indulging in the decadent lifestyle promised by the game's more mature paths. However, a glance back at his small, youthful hands brings him back to reality. He realizes that he is still just a child, far from the age when the game's story truly begins. The wait for his enrollment in the Magic Academy feels agonizingly long, and he wishes he could skip ahead to the glory days. While he dreams of his future as the legendary Siegmind, another boy, Alphonse von Very, lives a completely different life. Though they are destined to cross paths in 5 years, their personalities and circumstances couldn't be more opposite. The stage is set for a meeting that will change both of their fates forever. The tutor recalls the difficult days when a young master of the Very household was nothing more than a talentless, arrogant brat who refused to practice his magic. She had been on the verge of giving up entirely, convinced he would never learn. But now, her eyes widen in sheer disbelief at the sight before her. Under her watchful gaze, the boy pours every ounce of his concentration into maintaining several floating orbs of water, his face contorted with the effort as he counts down the final seconds of his self-imposed challenge. After the orbs finally splash back into the buckets, he gasps for air, wiped out but wearing a triumphant grin for having reached the 30-second mark. Watching him, his teacher struggles to reconcile this dedicated student with the boy who, until recently, couldn't perform the simplest task. Moments later, he looks up at her with genuine curiosity, asking for a way to extend the duration of the spell even further. She can only stammer in response, explaining that there simply isn't a known method to keep water suspended for much longer than he already has. As the two stand in the garden, she admits that while she wishes to guide him further, he has already mastered the fundamentals of mana manipulation far beyond her expectations. However, she quickly turns serious, reminding him that magic possesses the power to harm and that regulations forbid her from teaching advanced techniques until he enrolls in the Magic Academy. Fearing her usefulness has ended, she asks if she is to be dismissed, only for him to frantically object, pleading for her to stay and help him grow even stronger. She is left stunned by this desperate request, her mind racing as she remembers the relentless bullying she once endured from him. It seems the trash prince has truly vanished, replaced by a boy with an unquenchable thirst for power. She had left him to his own devices, and now the young boy found himself peeking cautiously around a stone pillar. He watched the maid, Riko, as she went about her duties, his eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and hesitation. He finally mustered the courage to call out to her, but the reaction was far from what he expected. Riko let out a startled yelp and bolted away as if she had seen a ghost, leaving him standing alone in the hallway. A wave of dejection washed over him. It seemed his past reputation still cast a long shadow. With nothing left to occupy his time at the manor, he decided it was time for a change of scenery. Moments later, he stood transformed, having traded his simple tunic for the gear of a fledgling explorer. Clad in a sturdy cloak and carrying a leather satchel, he looked every bit the part of adventurer Alphonse. Perched on his shoulder was his unlikely companion, a small, cheerful slime he called Boogie, ready for whatever lay ahead. He gave a determined pump of his fist, signaling to his gelatinous friend that it was time to move out. He recalled a map of the surrounding area, specifically a dungeon located in the nearby forest. His plan was simple: a quick scouting mission to test his mettle and see the world beyond the estate walls. As he made his way through the bustling streets of a nearby town, his ears caught the hushed, worried tones of the locals. The word bandits rippled through the air, catching his attention. He pulled his hood lower, blending into the shadows of the timber-framed buildings while he listened. He listened as they spoke of a recent surge in robberies and violent encounters within the territory, their faces etched with genuine fear. He realized that the peaceful life he had known at the manor was not the reality for everyone. The threat of his bandit group was a grim reminder of the dangers lurking just outside the Marquis's protection. He committed these warnings to memory as he hurried through the cobblestone alleys, his pace quickening with a new sense of purpose. If there were bandits nearby, he would need to be even more cautious. The information was vital, a piece of the puzzle he hadn't expected to find so soon. He eventually left the town behind, the buildings giving way to the dense foliage of the forest until he stood before the dark maw of a cave. He recognized this place from his memories of the game as a C-rank dungeon, one with shallow floors that should be manageable. However, the weight of reality pressed down on him. This wasn't a screen anymore, and this would be his very first time stepping into the unknown for real. He cautiously steps into the dim cavern, noting that while the entrance is manageable, the path ahead will require a light source. He begins to investigate the area, searching for clues. His eyes light up with a sudden realization as he examines a book, finding information that seems to confirm his suspicions. Meanwhile, back at the manor under the starry night sky, Riko is startled to see a familiar figure in the courtyard. She approaches Lady Rosalia, inquiring if Master Alphonse is currently in the estate, as she wishes to apologize for her earlier absence during his lessons. In response, Rosalia reveals that after their talk following the lesson, the boy simply vanished, leaving her just as confused about his whereabouts. The two women share a moment of sudden clarity, both exclaiming that Alphonse has undergone a profound change. Rosalia describes his magical progress as nothing short of extraordinary, while Riko warmly recalls how he now treats her as an equal, a stark contrast to his previous behavior. They stand together in the quiet night, acknowledging that while the memory of the old Alphonse lingers, they are both deeply moved by the person he is becoming. She is frozen in terror as a sudden, violent crash shatters the peace of the manor, her eyes wide with the shock of the intrusion. Following the destruction, a group of masked marauders storms the halls, laughing at the lack of security and boasting about how easy the heist has become in such a defenseless place. They quickly corner the two women, the lead bandit's eyes widening with malicious intent as he spots his next targets cowering before him. One of the thugs lunges forward, clamping a rough hand over her mouth to stifle any screams while his companions leer, celebrating their luck at finding such prizes amidst the chaos of their race. Suddenly, a barrage of magical projectiles streaks through the air, striking the attackers with unerring precision and forcing them to release their grip as Rosalia watches in stunned disbelief at the accuracy of the spell. He lands gracefully between the ladies and their assailants, urgently checking if they are unharmed while the bandits snarl in frustration. Meanwhile, Rosalia recovers her composure and begins to chant a powerful counterspell to seize the initiative. She slams her hands down, invoking the power of the earth to entwine the bandits in crushing roots, leaving them immobilized and helpless as the young boy watches the display of high-level magic with awe. The young boy stands firm, a shield between the maid and the remaining threat, his bravery drawing a look of profound gratitude and admiration from the woman he just saved. She watched in awe as the young master took command, his voice ringing out with a command for an aqua lance. The concentrated burst of water struck with incredible force, sending the lead intruder reeling backward. Alphonse marveled at the effectiveness of the magic stone he'd found in the dungeon, which allowed him to manifest such power without a lengthy incantation. With the bandits now firmly rooted in the earth, a tense silence fell over the garden. Rosalia, visibly shaken and perspiring, began to question the nature of the boy's magic and the strange blue creature accompanying him, while he struggled to find a plausible explanation for his advanced skills. Breaking the tension, the maid rushed forward, her voice trembling as she called out to ensure he was unharmed. He turned to meet her gaze, his expression one of mild surprise at her sudden outburst of concern. She pulled him into a fierce, tearful embrace, sobbing her gratitude for his bravery in protecting her from such danger. The young boy could only stand there, flustered by the intensity of her relief. As the household guards arrived to secure the prisoners, Rosalia added her own thanks, her composure slowly returning. The immediate crisis had passed, leaving the garden filled with the sounds of clanking armor and hushed whispers. By the following morning, the atmosphere had shifted to one of formal duty as the boy was summoned to report the incident to his father. To protect the secret of his true capabilities, it was agreed that Rosalia would be credited with the victory, as she was officially his only source of magical instruction. The Marquis listened intently, eventually offering a rare gesture of paternal pride by patting his son's head. He acknowledged that he had heard of the boy's contribution to the fight, leaving the young mage beaming with genuine joy. He sits at a garden table, the afternoon sun casting long shadows as the group enjoys a moment of hard-earned peace. The capture of the bandit gang has brought a sense of security back to the town and the estate, with patrols increased to ensure the peace holds. More importantly, the lingering tension between Riko and Lady Rosalia has finally vanished, replaced by a newfound camaraderie born from their shared secret. With a bright, determined smile, the young boy realizes that since his ability to use high-level magic has been revealed to his inner circle, there is no longer a need for complete secrecy among them. He eagerly asks to be taught more, specifically requesting rigorous training in mana manipulation to better control the vast power he now wields. His request is met with immediate and enthusiastic support from both women. Riko pledges to do whatever is within her power to assist him, her face beaming with loyalty, while Rosalia adjusts her glasses and promises to lend her expertise, however modest she considers it to be, to guide his development. Despite the progress in his training, some things remain unchanged, as Riko sternly reminds him that sneaking out in secret is still strictly forbidden. He can only offer a sheepish, nervous laugh in response to the maid's unwavering dedication to his safety and the rules of the household. 2 years pass in the blink of an eye, and the young boy has grown into a confident 12-year-old. Standing before the grand estate with a book in hand, he reflects on the time that has passed and looks forward to the future, knowing he has only 3 years left before he must leave home to enroll in the prestigious Magic Academy. 2 years of disciplined living have wrought a remarkable transformation, turning a once rotund child into a fit and capable young noble. He reflects on how this change has altered the way the people of the territory look at him, finding a new sense of freedom as he explores the lands he will one day oversee. He strolls through the bustling town of Garin. Though he is not alone, Riko follows closely at his side. While he had hoped to venture out in secret, she had intercepted him at the door, her unwavering dedication as a maid making her an inescapable, if pleasant, companion for his walk. Stopping at a public well, he begins to draw water under her watchful and curious gaze. The rhythmic creak of the pulley and the splash of the bucket provide a steady backdrop as she asks what purpose his sudden interest in the water supply serves. He explains that he is conducting a water quality survey, punctuated by the sudden conjuration of a small, translucent slime. She is visibly startled, marveling at the fact that magic can be applied to such practical, everyday tasks rather than just combat or grand displays. The young noble clarifies that this particular creature is designed to purify contaminated water, turning filth into something life-sustaining. She listens intently, her expression softening as she realizes the depth of thought he has put into the welfare of the common folk. He elaborates on his vision, stating that he wants the people of his territory to live healthy lives free from the threat of disease. Furthermore, he admits a personal motivation. If he is ever forced to leave and become an adventurer, he would prefer to live in a clean and orderly town. His selfless ambition brings tears of genuine admiration to her eyes. Overwhelmed by his kindness, she suddenly lunges forward and pulls him into a tight, emotional embrace. He is caught completely off guard, his face turning bright red as he flails and begs her to release him, embarrassed by the public display of affection. Their commotion is cut short when they spot a small beastkin girl crying alone in the middle of the street. He watches her with a heavy heart, noting that her kind often faces harsh discrimination and that a lost child of her race is in a particularly vulnerable position in this world. She remains the catalyst for the moment, her presence forcing a decision. Alphonse turns to Riko, startled by the intensity of the maid's gaze as she silently urges him to act. Because of this silent pressure, Riko's eyes begin to shimmer with unshed tears as she looks pleadingly at him, her faith in his kindness evident. He breaks into a cold sweat, feeling the weight of her expectations and the moral dilemma before him. Moments later, he lets out a weary sigh, admitting to himself that he simply cannot leave a crying child alone, regardless of the social consequences. Behind him, Riko's demeanor shifts instantly to one of enthusiastic encouragement, her hands clasped in support as she cheers for his decision. Approaching the fountain, he tries to comfort the wailing child, gently asking where she came from and if she is lost. The girl, however, only continues to sob, her cries echoing through the courtyard as she remains inconsolable. As the noise persists, he looks on with a mixture of pity and mounting panic, unsure of how to bridge the gap between them or stop the public scene she has created. Suddenly, a spark of inspiration hits him, and he raises a finger as a plan forms to use his abilities for something other than utility. Around them, the townspeople continue their business as dark silhouettes, oblivious to the small drama unfolding by the water. The young girl pauses her sobbing for a moment, her large, wet eyes looking up with a flicker of curiosity at the boy standing before her, sensing a change in his aura. In response, he begins to manipulate the fountain's water, creating playful, shimmering fish that dance through the air in a magical display. The spectacle works perfectly, capturing her attention and replacing her sorrow with a look of pure wonder. He continues to weave the water into delicate shapes, crafting translucent rabbits that hop through the air. The young girl watches with wide-eyed wonder, her previous distress replaced by pure fascination as the liquid creatures shimmer before her. This display soon draws the attention of the surrounding crowd, who begin to gather and whisper amongst themselves. They wonder aloud if they are witnessing a street performance or a rare demonstration of water magic, their curiosity piqued by the unusual sight in the middle of the square. Amidst the growing audience, Riko watches with a mix of surprise and concern, hearing the onlookers question why a noble would use his magic for the sake of a beastkin outsider. Despite the murmurs, the young boy remains focused on his task, his smile brightening as he sees the joy he is bringing to the small girl. The commotion eventually reaches the ears of Lady Regina Olsen, who approaches the scene with her own attendant. She pauses, her gaze fixed on the crowd as she inquires about the source of the noise, her presence adding a new layer of tension to the gathering. Unaware of the noblewoman's arrival, he continues to entertain the girl, his face lit up with excitement. He points out the floating spheres of water, delighted by the girl's enthusiastic reaction as she reaches out toward the shimmering orbs. As she watches from the edge of the crowd, Regina's expression softens into one of quiet observation. The girl beside him is now completely enthralled, her laughter ringing out as the water dances through the air, momentarily bridging the gap between their worlds. With a final flourish, he presents a shimmering sphere of water to the girl as a gift, prompting a sudden burst of applause from the gathered townspeople. The unexpected cheers snap him back to reality, and he looks around in surprise, realizing just how many eyes are now fixed upon him. Just as the girl's mother rushes forward to reunite with her child, he begins to break into a cold sweat. He mutters to himself about his failure to remain inconspicuous, his heart sinking as he realizes that his simple act of kindness has made him the center of public attention. He waves a cheerful farewell to the young beastkin girl and her mother, his heart lightened by the girl's grateful parting words. Despite the successful deed, he finds himself sweating under the weight of the sudden attention, while his loyal maid, Riko, is overcome with emotion, her eyes welling with tears of pride. She continues to gush about how wonderful and moving his magic was, leaving him feeling slightly overwhelmed and eager to retreat from the public eye. As they walk away, he reflects on the power of shared joy to bridge the gap between races, hoping that such moments might one day erase the deep-seated prejudices of the world, even if caution remains a necessity for self-defense. Meanwhile, the town square buzzes with rumors of the mysterious water mage, a title that catches the ear of Lady Regina Olsen. She watches his departing figure with a newfound intensity, the name of his craft lingering on her lips as a blush creeps across her cheeks. Elsewhere, in the Commoner District's training grounds, a different kind of power is being honed as a young man is sent sprawling into the dirt during a sparring session. He quickly recovers, a confident smirk playing on his lips as his instructor marvels at his rapid growth and admits he can no longer best him. To the young man, this progress is only natural. After all, he carries the soul and legacy of the legendary hero Artorias within him, a fact that makes his current strength feel like a mere shadow of what is to come. After the session, he is approached by a group of his female classmates, their hesitant steps and nervous glances drawing his curious attention as he asks if they need something. They finally muster the courage to speak, their faces flushed as they reveal that one of them has developed deep feelings for him, culminating in a shy request for him to consider a romantic relationship. He gently but firmly declines the young girl's advances, stating that he simply cannot accept her feelings. Confused and hurt, she looks up at him, her voice trembling as she asks for a reason behind his sudden rejection. With a calm and resolute expression, he explains that his heart is already set on someone else. This declaration, rather than deterring his classmates, only seems to heighten their admiration. They watch him walk away, whispering amongst themselves about his mysterious devotion and undeniable charm. Internally, his thoughts are far more arrogant, as he scoffs at the idea of a legendary hero's reincarnation dating mere commoners. His true ambition lies with Princess Olivia von Altria, a woman of high status and beauty who he believes is the only one truly worthy of his destined greatness. As he strides away, feeling quite satisfied with his dramatic exit, he reflects on the 3 years remaining before he and Alphonse are set to enter the Magic Academy. He considers the potential of Lady Regina and Rosalia, wondering which of them might eventually cross his path as he prepares for the destiny that awaits him. He returned to the estate looking like he had crawled out of a war zone, his clothes tattered and his spirit dampened. The B-rank dungeon had proven far more treacherous than he anticipated, and the realization that he had been gone for over a month without a word weighed heavily on him. His arrival was met not with a warm welcome, but with a thunderous scolding from Riko, whose voice echoed through the halls as she lectured him on his recklessness. Because of his disappearance, he found himself facing the grim reality of being grounded indefinitely. He slumped his shoulders in defeat, the weight of his punishment sinking in, while she stood over him with an air of absolute authority, declaring that such a consequence was only natural given his behavior. He attempted to defend his actions, arguing that had he sought permission to enter the dungeon, he would have been forbidden from going at all. This admission only fueled her disbelief, as she struggled to comprehend how a young boy could survive for over a month in such a hostile environment. While the lecture continued in the background, he drifted into his own thoughts, reflecting on the harsh lessons learned within the dungeon's depths. He acknowledged that his current strength was insufficient for such trials, yet he found solace in the fact that his mastery over water magic had grown and his connection with his slime companion had solidified. His lack of attention did not go unnoticed, however, as she grew increasingly frustrated by his distant gaze. Meanwhile, in the quiet of his study, the Marquis let out a heavy sigh of exasperation. He leaned back, contemplating the constant trouble his son seemed to attract, feeling the burden of the boy's unpredictable nature. She entered the room shortly after, addressing the Marquis and his wife with a serious expression. She noted that just as they believed the boy was finally maturing, he had vanished once again, causing undue worry. With a determined look, she announced that she had devised a strategy to address the situation. The Marquis looked up, his curiosity piqued by her confidence. He asked for clarification, and she raised a finger, signaling that she had a specific solution in mind to curb the boy's wandering spirit. The following day, she delivered the news that Lady Regina Olsen would be arriving for a visit, a revelation that caught him completely off guard. Regina, his betrothed, hailed from a royal lineage that had fallen into financial ruin due to poor management. While the original history of this world dictated a bitter end to their engagement, the current reality saw the two families seeking to forge a stronger bond to restore the Olsen family's lost fortune. He reflects on the reality of his situation. The engagement to Regina Olsen is nothing more than a cold, political arrangement. He recalls her disdainful expression from their past encounters, a stark contrast to the gluttonous, unpleasant version of himself she once knew. Despite his reservations, his maid remains relentlessly enthusiastic, declaring her readiness to showcase a wonderful version of him to the visiting lady. He attempts to feign a sudden illness to escape the ordeal, but she immediately dismisses the notion, refusing to let a mere cold stand in the way of her meticulously planned debut. Meanwhile, at the Olsen estate, the young lady herself gazes out from her balcony with a heavy heart. She dreads the upcoming visit. Viewing the prospect of seeing the boy she considers trash as a chore she must endure for the sake of her family standing. She can hardly contain her resentment toward the marriage her parents forced upon her. Every memory of their previous tea parties is tainted by his repulsive behavior, the way he would snort and cast unsettling glances in her direction. The desperation is so great that she briefly contemplates a reckless leap from the balcony, hoping a minor injury might spare her from the meeting. Her dark thoughts are interrupted by the arrival of her personal maid, Celia, who enters with a fresh pot of tea. Regina tries to mask her frustration, her mind drifting back to a fleeting encounter in the city of Galleon with a mysterious and handsome water mage whose back she had only glimpsed, yet who left a lasting impression on her heart. Noticing the distant look in her mistress's eyes, the maid playfully suggests that she might be falling for this unknown sorcerer. Regina's face flushes a deep crimson as she vehemently denies the accusation, though her flustered reaction tells a far different story to the observant servant. The light-hearted moment fades as Celia reminds her that tomorrow is the scheduled tea party at the very estate. The mention of the name sourly brings Regina back to reality, and she snaps at her maid to stop bringing up such unpleasant memories, especially when she's trying to hold onto the image of the silver-haired mage. However, the maid quickly adds a piece of intriguing news. There have been rumors of the water mage being spotted in the vicinity of the very territory. This revelation instantly changes her demeanor. Her eyes sparkle with newfound hope as she realizes that the dreaded visit might actually provide a chance to cross paths with the mysterious man she admires. She was on her way, but at the very estate, Alphonse was the one feeling the weight of the upcoming meeting. As his maid, Rico, enthusiastically announced that it was nearly time for the tea party, he adjusted his collar with a sense of dread. He knew the girl likely despised him based on his past reputation, yet he reminded himself that he wasn't the same person anymore, not just on the outside, but on the inside as well. His internal reflection was interrupted by Rico's excited chatter about the rumors circulating in town. She spoke of a heroic water mage who had saved a young girl, her eyes sparkling with admiration for this mysterious figure. Unaware that the boy she was currently dragging toward the entrance was that very mage, she urged him forward to welcome their guest with a bright smile. Outside, the carriage came to a halt, and the guest of honor finally made her appearance. Stepping onto the stone path with practiced grace, she looked every bit the noble lady, her expression composed and her attire impeccable. She moved with a quiet confidence, unaware of the surprise that awaited her just inside the manor doors. He stepped forward to greet her, offering a polite smile that masked his own nerves. Seeing her in person, he noted that she appeared even younger than he remembered from the stories of his past life, yet she carried the unmistakable aura of the girl he knew. He welcomed her warmly, expressing his genuine pleasure at finally meeting her face to face. She froze, her gaze fixed on the handsome young man before her as a faint blush crept onto her cheeks. Confused by the presence of this refined stranger, she wondered if he was perhaps a new butler, though he seemed far too elegant for such a role. Finally, she managed to find her voice, hesitantly asking for the whereabouts of Master Alphonse. The young man simply maintained his calm demeanor as he confirmed that he was, in fact, Alphonse. The revelation hit her like a physical blow, leaving her momentarily speechless as she struggled to reconcile the person standing before her with the image she had held in her mind. Her world seemed to tilt on its axis as memories of the old Alphonse, the arrogant, unkempt boy she had once known, clashed violently with the reality of the polished youth now smiling at her. The sheer impossibility of the transformation left her mind reeling, her thoughts spinning into a chaotic void as she tried to process this inexplicable change. They eventually settled into their seats for the long-awaited tea party, despite the internal turmoil. The atmosphere in the grand room was thick with unspoken questions and a newfound tension, as they prepared to navigate a conversation that was bound to be far different from anything either of them had originally anticipated. She sits across from him, the silence of the room punctuated only by the soft clink of teacups. Regina struggles to reconcile the refined boy before her with the one she once knew, eventually apologizing for her obvious shock at his transformation. Alphonse merely offers a gentle smile, dismissing her concerns by noting that such reactions have become quite common. As the meeting continues, he speaks with a quiet confidence that leaves her even more impressed, his every movement possessing a grace befitting his station. Regina observes him closely, noting that even the way he handles his tea is impeccable. When she tentatively asks if he has been focusing on his magic studies, he confirms it as a necessary pursuit for any noble, bringing their brief encounter to a polite conclusion. Days pass, yet the visits do not cease. Rico enters Alphonse's room with a look of mild amusement, announcing that Regina has arrived for the third consecutive day. The news catches him off guard, but the maid can't help but chuckle, remarking that the young lady seems to be watching him with the intense, unblinking curiosity of a scholar studying a rare specimen. Taking on the role of a self-appointed investigator, the maid ponders the true motive behind these frequent visits. She suggests that Regina is likely harboring words she is too hesitant to speak, trapped in a cycle of wanting to reach out but being unable to find the right opening. Nearby, the young noblewoman can only look away, her face flushed with a mix of frustration and embarrassment. He, however, finds himself preoccupied with his own pressing schedule, unable to host her today due to a prior commitment at the Adventurers Guild. As he prepares for his sword training, a thought crosses his mind. Perhaps she is seeking a way to formally end their engagement. He realizes that without his former, abrasive personality to push her away, the situation has become far more delicate and difficult to navigate. When he reveals his intention to practice swordsmanship, the news hits Rico like a physical blow. She recoils in theatrical shock, lamenting that the world must surely be coming to an end if her master is voluntarily picking up a blade. He can only sigh at her over-the-top reaction, his resolve unshaken despite her dramatic protests. Despite the social stigma that views the blade as a weapon for those lacking magical talent, he remains committed to his training. He understands that if the path ahead leads to his eventual exile, he must be prepared to survive as an adventurer, where raw strength and versatility are the only laws that matter. His eyes burn with a new determination. He seeks to master both steel and sorcery, not just for survival, but to ensure he has the power to protect his family's legacy. Sensing a shift in the atmosphere, he turns to his loyal maid and asks if she feels a sense of loneliness seeing him change so rapidly. Rico quickly dismisses the notion, her cheeks reddening as she tells him to pay her no mind. He watches her go, left with a nagging feeling that both she and Regina have been acting quite strangely as of late. He had arranged for Rico to decline Lady Regina's invitation, choosing instead to make his way toward the Adventurers Guild training grounds. Standing before the guild, the young boy felt the sting of the crowd's judgment. The whispers were venomous, mocking him as the pig son of the very household and scoffing at the idea of a noble wielding a blade. It was clear that his infamy had spread far beyond the manor walls. He thought back to his father's explosive reaction when he first mentioned the training. The Marquis had initially been furious, but eventually conceded, promising to find a master of unparalleled skill. Now, he could only wonder what kind of person his father had managed to recruit. The rhythmic click of boots against the pavement announced an approaching presence, drawing his attention toward the entrance. He was stunned to see a woman with a commanding aura and a sharp, disciplined gaze. This was Kureha Howell, the S-rank sword saint known for her peerless skill and her tragic past. He knew that she despised the nobility with every fiber of her being, making her the most formidable and potentially hostile mentor he could have asked for. She addressed him with a chilling formality, explaining that she was there on a guild commission to test his mettle, while she secretly planned to break his spirit, believing him to be nothing more than a bored aristocrat. He stood his ground, fueled by the knowledge that he had only 3 years to prepare before his life at the academy would truly begin. Long ago, A tragedy fueled by a noble's reckless magic had stripped her of everything, leaving her with a burning hatred for the aristocracy. To support her sister, she had honed her skills until she was hailed as the Sword Saint. Yet her reputation for brutal training usually sent aspiring noble students fleeing in short order. She expected the same from her newest pupil, watching as he struggled to catch his breath after a grueling bout. To her astonishment, instead of quitting, the boy bowed deeply, thanking her for the lesson and eagerly requesting to return the following day. He arrived the next morning with that same infectious energy, calling out to her as his master. With a bright smile and eyes sparkling with determination, he asked for her continued guidance, showing no sign of the fatigue that should have plagued him. The young boy's dedication was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. No matter how many times she struck him down or how demanding the drills became, he returned to the training grounds day after day, his focus never wavering as he practiced his swings. His growth began to border on the supernatural, as he started to read her movements with the intuition of a seasoned warrior. She watched in silence as he adjusted his breathing and timing, landing a precise strike that proved his talent was far beyond that of a mere amateur. He was ecstatic after the successful exchange, his gratitude overflowing as he thanked her for the breakthrough. Watching him, she realized with a touch of melancholy that at this rate, he would surpass her within a year, and she found herself wishing she could stay by his side long enough to see him reach his full potential. Meanwhile, within the quiet halls of the very estate, another of his mentors was concluding her daily duties. After finishing their magic lesson, she bid him a polite farewell, while he expressed his usual enthusiasm for their next meeting. She then sought out the Marquis to deliver a startling announcement. She was resigning as the boy's tutor. When pressed for a reason, she confessed with a mixture of pride and humility that his abilities had already eclipsed her own, leaving her with nothing more to teach a student of his caliber. She remains firm in her decision, explaining that once he enters the Saphirian Magic Academy next year, he will be able to learn magic suited to his level. He protests, expressing his desire to continue learning from her specifically, but she has already received the Marquis's approval for her resignation. Seeing his disappointment, she offers a gentle smile and promises to ask her father to help find her a new position, thanking him for being such a gentleman. He can only nod in quiet understanding, the weight of the parting settling over them. He reflects on how far he's come, marveling at being called a gentleman by a woman when he used to be known as a disgusting pig. She feels a sense of relief, knowing that in the original game's timeline, she would have been driven to despair by his harassment, but now, that dark future has been averted. They exchange a final, hopeful farewell, promising to study magic together again if their paths cross. The following morning, the sun rises over the very estate, marking the beginning of a new chapter in his training. At the Galleon Adventurers Guild training grounds, he meets with his combat instructor, who stands before him with a sharp, focused gaze. She announces that today they will not be using wooden practice weapons, but real steel, as she intends to test his progress with a serious sparring match. He is taken aback by the sudden shift in her intensity, sensing a dangerous edge he hasn't seen before. He draws his blade, his expression hardening as he accepts the challenge. She moves into a ready stance, her movements fluid and predatory, signaling that she won't be holding back. With a sudden burst of speed, she lunges forward, her sword a blur of silver that forces him into a desperate parry. He grunts under the pressure of her strike, realizing that her training has evolved into a true battle for survival. The air rings with the clash of steel as they trade blows, her attacks coming with a ferocity that leaves him no room for error. He struggles to find an opening, his mind racing to keep up with the Sword Saint's overwhelming technique as she aims a precise thrust toward his throat. He barely reacts in time, as the lethal thrust proves to be nothing more than a clever feint. The realization hits him just as the blade shifts trajectory, forcing a desperate evasion to avoid the true strike. This display of skill leaves the onlookers in the training hall breathless, their whispers filling the air as they struggle to comprehend how a young noble can trade blows with the legendary Ice Knight. They watch in awe as he continues to hold his ground against her relentless assault. When she questions if he truly perceived her strike, he confirms with a steady nod, explaining that he hasn't just been watching her sword, but studying her every breath, the tension in her muscles, and the subtle shifts in her weight. His mental training has sharpened his senses to a razor's edge. Impressed by his growth, she decides to unveil a true secret technique, the flying spin slash, leaping into the air with a grace that belies the destructive power she's about to unleash. She challenges him to witness the full extent of her prowess. He recognizes the maneuver instantly, remembering it as a devastating boss killer from his past life that uses the momentum of a mid-air twist to shatter any defense. He knows that if even a single blow connects, the duel will be over instantly. Knowing that a direct confrontation would be fatal, he times his movement perfectly with her rotation, diving toward her blind spot to slip behind her back. It is a gamble that requires absolute precision and nerves of steel. The sudden counter catches her off guard, and as the dust settles, she is forced to concede, admitting with a quiet grace that she has been completely defeated. The tip of his blade rests in a position that signals his victory. She beams at him, her previous intensity replaced by genuine admiration for his ability to read an opponent, declaring that his talent is the real deal. He remains humble, however, privately acknowledging that in a true life-or-death struggle, he likely would not have survived. He watches as the legendary swordswoman humbles herself, her voice steady as she addresses him with a formal request. The young boy's eyes widen in disbelief when she declares her intention to resign as his master, claiming she has nothing left to impart. He pleads with her, his voice cracking as he expresses his desire to continue learning, unable to bear the thought of another departure so soon after Rosalia's. She counters his protests by pointing out that his raw skill already eclipses her own, needing only the tempering of real combat to reach its full potential. Despite her praise, he remains adamant, insisting that she is the stronger of the two and begging her to remain his mentor. Observing his desperate refusal, she realizes the truth. He has built a mental wall, a subconscious barrier that prevents him from acknowledging his own superiority over his teacher. Stepping back, she reaffirms her decision, stating firmly that her role as his instructor has reached its natural conclusion. He can only look at the ground in silence, the weight of her words sinking in. Suddenly, she shifts her stance and makes a startling proposal that sends a ripple of shock through the gathered crowd. She declares that if she can no longer be his master, she wishes to serve him instead, asking to be sworn in as his personal knight. With her hand pressed to her heart, she formally petitions him to accept her oath of fealty, her eyes burning with a new, fierce determination. He considers the implications, knowing that in the original tales, she was destined to serve another, yet he finds he cannot turn her away. When he finally grants his consent, her face lights up with a radiant, joyful smile, marking the beginning of a new bond between them. She looks up with unwavering determination as the ritual begins. Alphonse, holding his blade with a gravity beyond his years, initiates the formal knight's contract. He asks if she will swear her eternal loyalty to him as her lord, and without a moment's hesitation, she shouts her vow, her voice ringing with absolute conviction. She kneels in silence as he rests the flat of the blade upon her shoulder, finalizing the bond before a stunned crowd of onlookers. With a clear, authoritative voice, he formally accepts her service, declaring her his knight. Deep within, the consciousness of the man from another world marvels at the shift in destiny. In the original tale, this legendary warrior was meant to stand beside the hero, yet here she is, kneeling in fealty to a boy who should have been a mere footnote. The young lord matures as years flow by like a river, standing now as a composed youth before the grand spires of the Septentrion Magic Academy. Clad in a sharp student uniform, he gazes at the institution marking the start of his journey. The game's scenario is now only hours away. The young lord stands ready for his new journey, receiving warm congratulations on his admission to the Royal Academy. While he expresses his gratitude with a polite smile, Riko, the loyal maid, is overcome with emotion, her tears a testament to the years she has spent by his side. The moment of departure is interrupted by the arrival of a carriage so ostentatious it practically glows with gold. It is a gift from the Marquis, intended to flaunt their status to the commoners, but the sheer gaudiness of the vehicle leaves everyone present in a state of disbelief and embarrassment. Amidst the confusion, Lady Regina arrives, her presence as sharp as ever. She greets the group, noting that as his betrothed, it is only natural that they travel to the academy together, though her sudden appearance catches the young lord off guard. However, the atmosphere quickly sours when she perceives a lack of enthusiasm in his response. Feeling slighted by his apparent reluctance to share the journey, she turns away, her disappointment palpable as she begins to distance herself. Her frustration boils over as she catches sight of the golden carriage, loudly decrying its lack of taste. She rants about the absurdity of such a display, viewing the extravagant vehicle as nothing more than a shameful waste of resources that insults the very people it is meant to impress. Watching her outburst, he can't help but feel that she truly despises him, resigned to the idea that their strained relationship is simply an unchangeable fact of his new life. Yet, Riko watches from the sidelines, sensing a much deeper and more complex affection hidden beneath the girl's fiery exterior. The maid attempts to enlighten him, explaining that the young lady is merely struggling to be honest with her own heart. He remains unconvinced, finding it impossible to imagine a version of the future where her sharp tongue ever gives way to genuine warmth. Realizing they're falling behind schedule, she urges them to make haste for the academy. As they prepare to leave, the weight of the situation settles in. The role of a fiancé is a powerful one, and the arrival of such a formidable presence marks the beginning of a new, complicated chapter. She watches as the golden carriage jolts along the path. The journey to the academy finally underway. Inside, Alphonse stares out at the passing scenery, his mind fixed on a singular goal: to focus entirely on his magic studies and avoid any actions that might draw the attention of the world's protagonists. Inside the cabin, the quiet reflection is broken by the high-pitched excitement of his companions. Rico is busy using a magical tool to record Alphonse, gushing about how magnificent he looks, while Regina suggests that he should stop hiding his light and let the world know of his incredible talents as a water mage and a swordsman. Alphonse can only look on, thinking about how blissfully unaware they are of the risks of such fame. Despite their constant praise, he remains firm in his resolve. He has no desire to stand out or be recruited for dangerous guild requests. His only wish is to blend into the background of the academy and live a peaceful life away from the central narrative of this world. The girls continue to shower him with admiration, seemingly ignoring his internal pleas for normalcy. Kureha, who has officially joined the group under a knight's contract, reaffirms her dedication to him, promising to handle everything from his protection to his daily chores. Their conversation is cut short as the majestic spires of the royal capital finally appear in the distance. The carriage eventually enters the heart of Granshan, the sprawling royal capital. The sheer scale of the city is overwhelming, with massive stone structures and streets packed with a sea of people. Rico leans out, her eyes wide with wonder at the sheer size and energy of the metropolis. As he takes in the bustling city, he notes how different the reality is from the simplified maps he remembers. The capital is a complex labyrinth of districts, far more intricate and crowded than any representation could convey. Before they can even disembark, a heated competition erupts between his attendants. Rico and Kureha engage in a fierce game of rock, paper, scissors to decide who will have the honor of carrying his luggage and staying by his side. Rico claims a decisive victory, leaving the legendary sword saint in a state of comical despair, while Alphonse simply walks ahead, leaving them to their antics. Leaving the chaos behind, he finally stands before the grand entrance of the Septrion Magic Academy. A sense of gravity settles over him as he realizes that this is where the true story begins, and he must navigate the challenges ahead to maintain the quiet life he craves. He watches from the periphery as a commotion breaks out on the academy grounds. A young girl is shoved roughly to the stone path, her basket of fruit spilling everywhere. A boisterous boy looms over her, his face twisted in a sneer as he demands to know who gave her permission to be there, his voice dripping with unearned authority. Before the bully can strike again, another youth intervenes with a swift, decisive blow that sends the aggressor reeling. He moves with a practiced grace, immediately turning his attention to the fallen girl. With a gentle expression, he offers her a hand and reassures her that everything will be all right, promising to tend to her injuries himself. He then channels his mana, conjuring a crackling, lightning arrow that illuminates the courtyard. The display of power is enough to send the bully and his companions fleeing in terror. As the dust settles, the girl looks up at her savior with wide, sparkling eyes, her voice trembling as she offers her heartfelt thanks for his timely rescue. She introduces herself as Olivia von Altria, her noble lineage evident in her refined manner despite the recent scuffle. She admits she had been observing him for some time, drawn by his presence. From his vantage point, the silent witness realizes he is seeing the fated first meeting between the story's protagonist and its primary heroine, a pivotal moment he knows all too well. He continues his walk through the academy grounds, accompanied by Rico, who remains ever watchful at his side. They move quietly, passing through the shadows of the grand architecture, as he tries to process the reality of the events unfolding before him. So different yet so similar to the tales he once knew. His gaze lingers on the young hero, Siegmind, noting that the boy's expression is far more intense and perhaps even more intimidating than the legends ever suggested. There is a sharpness in Sieg's eyes that feels out of place for a simple student, a realization that makes the observer's heart race with a mixture of curiosity and unease. The young hero begins to cast a healing spell, his hands glowing with a soft, rhythmic light as he focuses on the girl's scraped knee. To the surrounding students, it is a display of chivalry and kindness. But to the one watching from afar, it is the unmistakable start of a scripted event that will change the course of this world. Despite his status as a destined savior, the magic seems to take longer than expected to take effect. He remains knelt on the ground, brow furrowed in concentration, while the observer notes that even a protagonist's level 1 healing magic has its limitations in this living, breathing reality. He continues to observe the scene alongside his maid, who frets over the young girl's potential for a permanent scar. He can only offer a quiet word of agreement as they watch the drama unfold from the periphery. When his companion suggests that he could surely mend the wound without leaving a trace, a strange sense of familiarity washes over him, as if he has witnessed this exact moment in another life. Nearby, the dark-haired youth remains at the girl's side, urging her to find the strength to stand while privately hoping his distance from certain individuals will keep the future stable. The girl, however, can only look up at him in confusion, wondering who her savior is. Deciding he cannot simply stand by, the young noble steps forward and invokes a powerful restoration spell. High Heel, his hands beginning to glow with a potent, divine light that outshines the previous efforts. The sudden surge of magical energy catches the dark-haired boy completely off guard, his eyes widening in shock as the brilliant radiance envelopes the injured girl, far exceeding the level of magic expected in such a place. As the light fades, the girl stares at her unblemished skin in wonder. Realizing the pain has vanished entirely, she offers a heartfelt thanks to her new benefactor, unaware that such a high-level spell is usually reserved for those who have mastered the arcane arts. He meets her gratitude with a gentle smile, dismissing the act as a simple duty of his station, though internally he is already planning a swift exit to avoid drawing any further attention to his extraordinary abilities. As he walks away with his maid, he thinks he hears a sharp click of a tongue from behind him, but he quickly brushes the thought aside, leaving the dark-haired youth to brood in the shadows of this unexpected intervention. Though he has already departed, the consequences of his intervention weigh heavily on those left behind, leaving the princess in a state of perfect, unexpected health. Watching from the shadows, the young man's heart seethes as he witnesses the narrative he painstakingly constructed crumble before his eyes. The grand spires of the academy offer no comfort, only serving as a silent witness to his mounting failure, and with a sharp curse, he slams his fist against the cold stone in a fit of impotent rage. He retreats to the isolation of a cramped bathroom stall, allowing his composure to shatter completely as he trembles with a violent, bone-deep intensity. His face contorts into a mask of pure, unadulterated fury, teeth gritted so hard they threaten to crack, while he desperately tries to make sense of the anomaly. He knows this world's script inside and out, having memorized even the most insignificant background characters. Yet this silver-haired boy is a ghost, a variable that should not exist, yet has somehow managed to ruin his glorious first event. In a world as it was meant to be, he would have been the undisputed hero, striking down a loathsome, gluttonous version of Alphonse von Very to earn his rightful place by Olivia's side. That was the established path, the moment where he was supposed to initiate his first conversation with the princess and begin his ascent. Instead, the reality he knew has been torn asunder, replaced by a sequence of events that leaves him sidelined and ignored. The weight of this deviation is agonizing, and he clutches his head as if trying to physically hold his fracturing mind together. He hasn't even managed to speak to Olivia, let alone meet her under the heroic circumstances the script demanded. To make matters worse, the memory of the interloper being thanked by a beast-king girl burns in his mind. In that moment, the silver-haired boy looked more like a true protagonist than he ever has, a realization that tastes like ash in his mouth. Huddled in the shadows of the stall, he repeats a single word like a dark, desperate mantra. Impossible. He refuses to accept this distorted reality, convinced that he must reclaim the correct world where he is the sole center of the stage. If this interloper intends to continue breaking the established order, then he is no longer just an anomaly, but a direct threat to the very fabric of the destiny he was promised. As the image of the calm, noble boy flickers before his eyes, his own expression darkens into something truly monstrous. The path forward is no longer about following a script, but about removing the obstacle that has dared to rewrite it. With a chilling finality, he realizes there is only one way to ensure his role as the protagonist. He must kill him. Olivia von Altria, the second princess, gazes out with a heavy heart. She reflects on her identity and the grim state of her nation, concluding that the kingdom has become fundamentally corrupt. In this land, magic is the ultimate arbiter of destiny, a privilege reserved for the nobility while commoners remain powerless. This imbalance has birthed a class of arrogant aristocrats who lounge in luxury, their status bought by the sheer volume of their mana. Yet, her eyes are fixed on a different kind of person. She recalls how he stepped forward to aid a beast-king girl, a group often marginalized in this society. Her loyal maid and knight, Aisha, observes that he is exactly the kind of individual they require. Olivia realizes she has finally found the perfect candidate for her secret ambitions. The boy's feats were nothing short of extraordinary, wielding high-level magic without a single spoken word despite his youth. Even more striking was his character. He had refused any payment from the girl's mother, displaying a humility that stood in stark contrast to the typical noble's vanity. To her, he represents the ideal of noblesse oblige, the duty of the highborn to protect the weak, a concept forgotten by the lazy pretenders currently infesting the court. She becomes resolute. She must bring him into her fold, no matter what. Turning to her confidant, she commands an investigation into his background, his social ties, and even his personal life. Aisha is momentarily taken aback by the princess's specific interest in his relationships with other women. She quickly tries to dismiss the inquiry as having no deeper meaning, her face flushing a telltale crimson. Aisha can't help but chuckle internally, finding the princess's transparent reactions quite amusing. The focus shifts to the grand spires of the Septrion Magic Academy as the entrance ceremony begins. A massive crowd gathers before the faculty, who announce that the first order of business will be the measurement of every student's magical capacity. As the entrance ceremony continues, she watches with a focused gaze, anticipating the next event, the mana measurement. This ritual will determine the social standing of every student within these walls. The academy's hierarchy is rigid, sorting students into classes from A to F based on their internal reserves. Because mana capacity is almost entirely hereditary, this system serves to reinforce the power of the established bloodlines, leaving little room for those of lesser birth to rise. Julius von Altria, the first prince of the kingdom, steps forward as the prime example of this genetic fortune. While the crowd swoons over his handsome features and royal pedigree, she sees through the facade. To her, he is a man who views people as nothing more than tools to be used and discarded. She recalls how he once targeted Alphonse, exploiting the boy's isolation as a low-ranking noble. He had attempted to use the young boy as a pawn to gain favor with her, showing a calculated cruelty that few others suspected. When his schemes failed to yield the desired results, he abandoned the boy without a moment's hesitation. This cold indifference is his true nature, hidden beneath a mask of princely charm that continues to deceive the masses. Returning to the present, he approaches the testing apparatus with an air of supreme confidence. The proctor invites the prince to place his hand upon the crystal, which will reveal the depth of his magical potential to the entire assembly. The crystal flares with an intense radiance, displaying a numerical value of 150. The hall erupts in thunderous applause and cheers, as this score is triple the average for a student, cementing his status as a magical prodigy and the most eligible bachelor in the academy. While the other students remain starstruck by the display, she watches with a grim expression, unimpressed by the spectacle. The proctor's voice rings out again, calling for the next candidate to step forward. Siegmund. Siegmund stands at the center of the hall, his hand resting on the testing crystal. The air crackles with tension as the official announces a staggering magic power of 900. A wave of shock ripples through the gathered students, their whispers filling the room with disbelief at such an unprecedented score for a commoner. He walks away from the pedestal with a self-satisfied smirk, his confidence bordering on arrogance. Behind him, the crowd remains in a state of agitation, some questioning the validity of the test, while others seethe with jealousy. The official's voice rings out again, confirming that his exceptional power has earned him a place in the prestigious Class A. As he steps down, the next name called is Alphonse von Very, the son of the Marquis. The young noble freezes for a moment, his eyes widening as the weight of the moment settles on his shoulders. As he makes his way forward, the whispers from the crowd take a different tone, filled with confusion and surprise. They had expected a bloated, unsightly noble, but instead, they see a handsome young man. He can't help but feel a pang of awkwardness, knowing that his appearance has defied the expectations set by the world's original narrative. He reaches the pedestal and stares down at the clear crystal ball, his expression focused. He knows he cannot reveal his true strength and must find a way to mask the sheer scale of his magical reserves. His mind races as he calculates the risks. His actual magic power sits at a massive 1800, a result of the rigorous daily training he has maintained since his reincarnation. He realizes that if he allows the full extent of his power to be measured, he will inevitably be placed in Class A, surrounded by the very main characters he is desperate to avoid. Recalling his lessons with Lady Rosalia, he remembers the grueling hours spent learning to fine-tune his mana flow. Through that relentless practice, he gained the ability to precisely control the amount of energy he releases, a skill that is now his only hope for a quiet life. With a deep breath, he finally places his hand upon the crystal, focusing every ounce of his will on suppressing his aura. The orb begins to glow with a soft, controlled light as the official prepares to read the manipulated result. He lets out a sigh of relief as the crystal displays a modest score of 50. It is exactly the average result he was aiming for to avoid unwanted attention. Because of this mediocre showing, the instructor coldly assigns him to Class C. Around him, the other students begin to snicker and whisper, mocking the idea of a nobleman possessing such pathetic mana, regardless of his good looks. The young noble walks away from the testing area, unbothered by the insults. He reasons that while it is unheard of for a member of the very house to score below 80, the trade-off of being looked down upon is a small price to pay for the quiet, unremarkable life he craves. As the testing concludes, and the students are directed to their respective classrooms, He reaffirms his commitment to blending into the background of Class C. However, his hopes for anonymity are instantly shattered when a voice booms over the intercom, summoning him to the faculty office immediately. The surrounding crowd erupts into fresh gossip, questioning what trouble the trash noble could have caused, leaving him to lament how his plan for a peaceful school life is already falling apart. Upon entering the office, he is stunned to find a familiar face waiting for him. Rosalia leaps up with a joyful greeting, her eyes sparkling behind her glasses as she welcomes him to the academy. While they walk through the halls, he asks how she came to be at the school. She explains that she was formally introduced to the Marquis Very, which led to her current appointment. She reveals that his father, moved by a profound sense of gratitude for her role in reforming his son, had personally arranged for her to join the faculty as a way of saying thank you. He stands frozen, a cold sweat breaking across his brow as the woman before him pierces through his facade with a single, pointed question. With a knowing glint in her eyes, she accuses him of concealing his true strength during the earlier mana evaluation, labeling him a very naughty boy for such a deception. Stuttering in his defense, the boy struggles to find a plausible excuse, knowing he can never reveal his true desire to simply fade into the background and avoid the central figures of this world. She remains unconvinced, pointing out the undeniable fact that his latent mana far surpasses even that of the renowned Sigmund. He attempts to pivot, claiming that the prestigious class it would simply be too troublesome, filled with demanding special curriculum and the constant, exhausting attention of noble ladies. His laughter rings hollow as she stares back with a flat, unimpressed expression, clearly seeing through his desperate attempts to justify his mediocrity. Her demeanor shifts as she looks away, her eyes veiled in shadow as she recalls the solemn vow she made upon departing the very estate. She speaks softly of her conviction to ensure that his extraordinary gifts are recognized by the world, a sentiment that leaves him blinking in silent, growing dread. Suddenly, she erupts with a fiery passion, her voice rising as she declares that his potential isn't just suited for Class A, but transcends even the elite SS class. She bellows that those blessed with such power have a moral obligation to wield it, just as it is a teacher's sacred duty to forge that raw talent into something magnificent. Before he can even voice a protest, she reveals that the matter is already settled, having already informed the headmaster of his immediate transfer to the top tier. With a final, resolute shout that she will entertain no objections, his dreams of a quiet school life vanish, replaced by the cold reality of his new placement in Class A. Alphonse sits in the prestigious A class, but the atmosphere is heavy with the hushed whispers of his peers. They question why the son of Marquis Very isn't in the lower C class, their eyes lingering on him with a mix of curiosity and judgment. He keeps his head down, eyes closed, trying to ignore the mounting pressure of their scrutiny. He eventually collapses onto his desk, a quiet sob escaping as he wonders how his life took such a drastic turn. The weight of his new reality seems to crush his spirit, leaving him feeling isolated amidst the bustling classroom. His mind drifts back to the cause of this predicament, his own flawless mana control. He recalls the moment Lady Rosalia, the only one who truly understood the depth of his power, insisted with a fiery passion that he belonged in the elite A class. It was a bitter irony that her knowledge of his secret had led him directly into the spotlight he so desperately wished to avoid. Desperate for an escape, he mutters to himself about wishing for the transparency of his slime companion, Boogie. His erratic behavior doesn't go unnoticed. The other students continue to gossip, noting that while he possesses the looks of a nobleman, his strange ramblings make him appear quite unstable. As he scans the room, his anxiety spikes at the sight of the Academy's most prominent figures. There stands Prince Julius, radiating confidence, and Princess Olivia, looking as elegant as ever. These were the main characters of this world, the very people he intended to stay far away from. Among them is the original protagonist, Sigmund, who sits with a composed and stoic demeanor. His presence is a constant reminder of the scripted path this world was meant to follow, a path that now feels dangerously close. His gaze then falls upon Lady Regina, who is accompanied by a cheerful companion named Lizelia. However, the moment their eyes meet, the air seems to chill. Regina's expression shifts from surprise to a dark, simmering resentment. She fixes him with a terrifying, soul-piercing glare that radiates pure malice. He realizes with a sinking heart that being trapped in the same class as her will be a nightmare, as her hatred for him has clearly not waned. She is approached by Lizelia, who curiously asks if she and Alphonse are childhood friends. Regina's expression remains guarded, offering only a non-committal hum in response to the inquiry. She watches with growing disdain as the other girls begin to gush over Alphonse's appearance, praising his height, his slender build, and his handsome features. Unable to contain her irritation, she mutters under her breath about how repulsive he truly is. She quickly backtracks when her sudden outburst leaves the others stunned, laughing nervously and waving her hands as she claims it was merely a joke share between old friends. Her frantic demeanor, however, betrays the true depth of her feelings. She nods in agreement when Zelia gently chides her, warning that such harsh words shouldn't be spoken aloud. Internally, however, she is seething, resenting the fact that she is being reprimanded because of someone she considers utter trash. Meanwhile, Alphonse sits silently at his desk, the center of a storm of attention. The classroom is alive with the excited whispers of students, all of them captivated by the presence of a young noble who has suddenly become the talk of the academy. Across the room, Sieg watches the spectacle with growing frustration, his mind racing with disbelief as he wonders how a commoner like himself is being overshadowed, especially when he recalls the incredible display of high-level healing magic Alphonse performed earlier. He begins to suspect that there is more to Alphonse than meets the eye, questioning if the boy might be a fellow reincarnator or perhaps an entity of equal standing, as the use of such advanced magic so early in their journey doesn't fit the world he thought he knew. The internal musings are interrupted as the instructor calls for attention, specifically addressing the young Very. The atmosphere in the room shifts as the formal lesson is about to begin, drawing everyone's focus back to the front of the class. The tension in the air became palpable as the weight of the moment hung heavy over the classroom. Sieg stared in disbelief, his pulse quickening as he realized the gravity of the situation, while Alphonse could only look on with wide-eyed surprise. With a graceful smile, the princess extended a formal invitation, her voice clear as she requested his presence at her private tea party. The surrounding students immediately erupted into hushed, frantic whispers, shocked that royalty would personally invite the son of a marquis, a tradition usually reserved for those the crown favored most. Despite the immense pressure, he bowed respectfully and declined, explaining that while he was honored, he could not attend the gathering. In the background, his companion was nearly overcome with dread, certain that such a slight would lead to ruin. He was paralyzed by the sheer audacity of the refusal, his mind racing with the knowledge that in their society, turning down a royal request was tantamount to ending one's social life before it had even begun. She took the rejection with a quiet, contemplative look, while nearby, the other students continued to murmur about the peril of his decision, knowing that no noble could survive the fallout of such an insult. When she gently pressed for a reason, he offered a firm justification. He already had a fiancée to whom he was committed. His friend felt a momentary surge of relief, praising the cleverness of the excuse. However, she merely brightened, suggesting that his fiancée should simply join them at the party as well. This unexpected countermove sent a fresh wave of shock through the crowd, leaving the other girls whispering in envy and disbelief about who this mysterious partner could be. She stands with her companion, discussing the mystery surrounding the young noble's engagement. The girl wonders aloud who the lucky lady might be, but the princess explains the harsh reality of their world. In high society, the identity of a fiancé is often kept secret until graduation to protect them from the very real threat of assassination. While her companion continues to swoon over how handsome and impressive the boy has become, the princess remains focused, her own thoughts drifting toward her mastery of water magic and the role she must play. Elsewhere, standing alone on a balcony, a silent observer stares into the distance, his expression unreadable as he contemplates the shifting tides of the academy. He reflects with growing bitterness on how everyone, from the princess to the other noble girls, seems to be gravitating toward the boy he once considered beneath him. It feels as though the very fabric of the story he knew is unraveling, leaving him as a mere spectator while a supposed trash noble takes center stage. Only one girl, he notes, seems to remain unchanged from the path he expected. Outside the grand dormitory, the evening air is filled with the sound of instructions as students are called back to their quarters to prepare for the days ahead. Inside, the young student is greeted with an exuberant welcome from his loyal maid and a very unexpected guest. The renowned sword saint has traded her armor for a servant's uniform, standing proudly as they celebrate his acceptance into the elite A-class. He can only stare in stunned silence, completely baffled by the warrior's sudden change in attire and role. They eventually settle down for tea, but the atmosphere remains heavy with the weight of recent events. The maid points out that the rumors regarding the princess's invitation have already spread throughout the school, a development that clearly troubles the young master as he contemplates the unwanted attention. Still, the former protagonist cannot reconcile this new reality with the one he remembers, unable to understand how a social outcast could suddenly be favored by royalty. His brooding is cut short as the maid approaches her master with a gentle smile, noticing his exhaustion and offering him a small token of her care. While the weight of his resentment continued to fester in another part of the academy, Rico approached Alphonse with a small, ornate vial. She explained that it was a gift of gratitude from the elf girl he had previously rescued, whom she had encountered while out shopping in the city. She watched as he took the potion, his expression darkening as he realized the gravity of the item. This was a powerful recovery tool that, in the original history he knew, was supposed to belong to Sieg. The realization that the narrative was drifting further from its intended path weighed heavily on him, all while Kureha observed his reaction with a sharp, silent gaze. His sudden pallor did not go unnoticed by the maid, who expressed her concern, asking if he felt ill. He forced a smile and dismissed the inquiry, claiming that nothing was the matter despite the obvious tension in his shoulders. She remained unconvinced, gently suggesting that the transition to life at the academy was likely more exhausting than he cared to admit. She encouraged him to retire for the evening and get plenty of sleep, especially with the high-stakes tea party with the princess scheduled for the next day. While she continued to fuss over him, a subtle, knowing grin spread across Kureha's face as she watched the exchange. Her amusement only grew as the room soon filled with a more chaotic energy as the maids began debating the details of the upcoming meeting with Lady Regina. Despite his protests that the lady might not even want to go, they insisted on her excitement, with Rico even jokingly offering to step in for his fiancée, leaving him feeling completely overwhelmed. He resolved to keep a low profile and avoid any further deviations from the original story, fearing that his presence was already causing too much disruption. After classes conclude, the Grand Academy grounds settle into a quiet afternoon, the shadows lengthening across the ornate architecture. Alphonse stands alone, contemplating his next move, when he is approached by a woman with fox-like ears. She informs him that he is expected at Princess Olivia's tea party, though he seems hesitant about how to proceed given the sudden invitation. The woman introduces herself as Aisha, a maid and knight serving Princess Olivia. She explains that she has come specifically to escort the young heir of the very household to the royal presence. Within the academy, a clear distinction exists between the students. While commoners reside in standard dormitories, royalty occupies a separate, highly restricted wing known as the royal dorms, where unauthorized entry is strictly forbidden and guarded by knights. Accepting the summons, he questions the whereabouts of his fiancée, wondering if she will be joining them for this unexpected gathering. Aisha clarifies that Lady Regina is being escorted separately by another attendant. To maintain the secrecy of the route to the princess's private quarters, she politely requests that he wear a blindfold, a security measure he accepts with a resigned sigh, understanding the weight of royal protocol. Upon arriving at the destination and removing the blindfold, he finds himself in a lavishly decorated room where Princess Olivia awaits them, seated with regal poise. Regina is already present, and Aisha prompts the young boy to offer a proper greeting to their royal host. As he takes in his surroundings, he realizes the entire floor has been converted into a private living space for the princess, protected by powerful magical barriers and jamming fields that prevent any form of eavesdropping or external observation, ensuring absolute privacy for their discussion. He sits comfortably across from the royal, thanking her for the invitation before bluntly asking the reason for his presence. Regina, standing nearby, is visibly appalled by his lack of etiquette toward the princess. In response, she confirms that she was indeed the one who summoned him, noting that his caution is only natural given the suddenness of the request. He observes her closely, noting that despite his informal attitude, she maintains a dignified and regal composure, clearly aware of her own stand. She decides to be equally direct, revealing her true intention. She wants him to join her faction. He immediately questions if this is related to the struggle for the throne. She confirms his suspicion, praising his quick wit. The political landscape is clear. King Philip von Altria has 7 children, but the 2 primary candidates for the succession are Prince Julius and Princess Olivia herself. She continues her pitch, explaining that to overcome her brother Julius, she requires a mage of exceptional talent. She formally invites him to join her camp, a move that mirrors the original story where the protagonist was scouted. She then reveals her ultimate goal, a world where humans and demi-humans can live in true equality. This, she claims, is the ideal she strives for. He realizes that her invitation stems from witnessing him heal the elf child earlier. She believes he shares her ideals and wants to pull him into her inner circle. However, he delivers a blunt refusal. The princess is left speechless, her eyes wide with shock at the unexpected rejection. He sat before the princess, his gaze lowered as he explained his simple desire to live a quiet, unremarkable life without interfering in the grand designs of the world. He questioned why someone of her stature would even bother with him, given his self-proclaimed status as a mere background figure. To support his claim of mediocrity, he produced a small, glowing mana stone, revealing that his recent display of healing magic was nothing more than a clever ruse. He explained that he had used the stone as a temporary catalyst to amplify his meager magical reserves, insisting that he possessed no true innate talent. The princess listened, her expression unreadable as she noted that his father's influence with the Academy's director was likely the only reason he had been placed in the prestigious A class. Internally, she recalled the established narrative where he was supposed to be a loathsome noble a role he seemed to be playing with surprising dedication. Stepping forward to reinforce this image, his fiancée, Regina, pointed an accusing finger and declared to the princess that he was indeed a quintessential, incompetent noble. While she vouched for his lack of merit, he couldn't help but feel a sting of realization at just how much she seemed to genuinely despise him. Despite the harsh assessment, the princess conceded, though she pivoted to a different matter entirely. She requested that even if he refused to join her cause, he might still assist her with a specific concern regarding the very family's lands. She spoke of rumors concerning a highly skilled water mage residing within his family's territory, expressing a desperate need to recruit such a talent to her side. As she asked him to use his family's resources to locate this mysterious figure, a cold sweat broke out on his brow as he realized that he was the very person she was searching for. The urgency in her voice grew as she explained that the mage's reputation for excellence had already reached her brother, Prince Julius. She stressed the importance of making contact first, fearing the consequences should her rival secure such a powerful ally before she could. He quickly masked his internal panic with a formal bow, promising to mobilize every knight in the very domain to hunt for the elusive mage. He gave his word to find them, all the while knowing that as long as he was the one leading the search, the water mage would never be found. He listens as the princess expresses her gratitude, her eyes closed in a moment of sincere appreciation. She promises that his willingness to help will not go unrewarded, before smoothly transitioning to a more personal request. She proposes a shift in their dynamic, suggesting that as classmates, they should dispense with formalities and address each other by their given names. With a bright, expectant smile, she encourages him to simply call her Olivia. The suggestion sends him into a silent panic, his mind racing with the realization that such intimacy was reserved for the story's true hero. Her gaze remains fixed on him, wide and filled with a gentle pressure that demands a response. The silence stretches as she waits for him to utter the name that feels like a heavy weight on his tongue. Finally, he forces the name out, his voice barely a whisper as he addresses her as Olivia. Her face lights up with joy, and she declares their friendship official, while nearby, Regina watches the exchange with a visible, simmering irritation. To cement this new bond, she presents him with a small, ornate box containing a ring. She explains that this artifact has the power to nullify magic circles, granting him unrestricted access to her private chambers whenever he wishes. He stands frozen, overwhelmed by the realization that he is the first man to ever be granted such a privilege. With a hesitant hand, he accepts the gift, though his heart is heavy with a growing sense of guilt. He knows this ring was a crucial item intended for another, and by taking it, he is actively stripping the rightful protagonist of his destiny. The weight of his interference begins to sink in, as he realizes that without this key, the path to the royal family is now closed to the one who was supposed to walk it. He curses his own involvement, fearing that he has irrevocably shattered the world's intended narrative. His internal turmoil is suddenly interrupted by a flash of light and a sharp command. A hooded figure strikes with lethal precision, unleashing a bolt shot that tears through the air, signaling a violent shift in the evening's events. He had already secured the magic nullifying ring, a realization that forced the hooded figure to stand over a fallen guard, contemplating the necessity of murder. To correct the distorted scenario of this world, the assailant believed he had no choice but to eliminate the boy, reclaim the artifact, and restore the heroines to their rightful places. He felt the weight of his descent into villainy, a bitter irony for one who believed himself the hero. Having already neutralized the perimeter guards, the figure lurked in the shadows near the gate, waiting for his target to emerge until the moment finally arrived. He roared a command for death as he unleashed a lightning arrow, the air crackling with intense energy as the bolt of pure radiance tore through the darkness. The strike was a violent explosion of light, centered perfectly on the boy's head with lethal intent. He continued to walk forward as if nothing had happened, leaving his assailant in a state of utter shock. It seemed impossible. The lightning arrow was a spell of legendary proportions, yet it failed to leave even a scratch. He fell to his knees, his mind racing to understand how a legendary spell could fail so completely. The realization hit him that his target must have been protected by a slime helm, a transparent defense created with water magic specifically designed to absorb magical impacts, leaving the supposed protagonist trembling in the dirt. He was forgotten as the young noble pondered the strange events of the night, wondering if the rumors from the tea party had made him a target. Though he briefly suspected his rival, he dismissed the idea, fearing instead that his very presence was causing the logic of this world to malfunction.